My name is Christopher Jones, and I'm the Stanton B. and Nancy W. Kaplan Curator of Photography and Media Arts here at the Ringling. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual Viewpoints lecture with artist Sandy Rodriguez. The occasion of her talk is in conjunction with the exhibition Sandy Rodriguez Currents of Resistance, which is on display here in our Monda Gallery for Contemporary Art until Sunday, August the 10th. So there's still time to catch it in person. The exhibition is the culmination of her 2023 Hermitage Greenfield Prize commission, and it represents 2 years of work across multiple sites here in Florida, down in Inglewood at the Hermitage Artist Retreat, at the Joshua Tree Highlands Artist Retreat in Joshua Tree, California, and the Artist Studios in Mar Vista, California. It is exciting to be able to host this newest aspect of her ongoing series, the Codex Rodriguez Mondragon, which is a body of work in which the artist engages with historic materials and techniques of the Americas to paint visual histories that layer both history and contemporary events, mapping resistance to ongoing colonial aggression and envisioning alternate futures. The exhibition is Rodriguez's first engagement with Florida, which is really exciting, in the Southeast here. She has researched the unique aspects of the Gulf's cultural resilience and ecological transformation over time. In this exhibition, she also has engaged with the history of museum collecting and display through her 40-foot panorama presentation, anchoring the installation of four new large-scale paintings and a site-specific artist-driven cabinet of curiosities, all of which encourages visitors and museum professionals alike to reflect on the enduring imperial legacies haunting our institutions. I have to also plug that there is a catalog of the installation of the exhibition here, an imminent catalog that is coming from our printers as we speak. It features new essays by Tatiana Flores, art historian at University of Virginia, and by Aaron Stone, history faculty at the University of West Florida, and wonderful insights and context into Sandy's research here and engagement with the Gulf region. Personally, for me, it's been a tremendously rewarding experience. As the curator of photography and media arts here, it's seldom that I get a chance to engage with ethnobotany, for example, but it's been wonderful to be able to really deeply engage with our states and our region's cultural history and ecology, and also collaborate with so many other professionals in the region, scholars, knowledge keepers. Particularly want to thank the staff at Mary Selby Botanical Gardens who are instrumental in helping to give us a better understanding of local ethnobotany and also contribute to our cabinet of curiosities. This exhibition is really special because it also marks the fifth collaboration between the Ringling and the Hermitage Artist Retreat and their Greenfield Prize winners in visual arts. And it is my third collaboration as a curator working with artists who have won the Greenfield Prize commission. We're really grateful to have been able to participate in this ongoing successful partnership over the years. I think about 12, 13, 14 years now, even longer. But our next guest can actually answer that question, perhaps. And I'm very happy to turn things over to the Hermitage CEO and artistic director, Andy Sandberg, who has offered tremendous support, he and his staff, for bringing this project to fruition. So, Sandy, we look forward to your remarks and your introduction of our artist.
Well, thank you, Chris. So thank you to you and your team for all of your brilliant work in pulling this beautiful exhibition together. I am staring out my office window looking at all the turtle nests that Sandy has so beautifully recreated in her work as she's tried to capture the essence of the culture and nature and the world of our climate and as it evolves. So I'm joyfully taking that in right here out my window, not to rub that in, as well as celebrating Sandy's work. And we are thrilled to have partnered with the Ringling Museum for so many years. It is the 17th year of the Hermitage Greenfield Prize. And I think, Chris, though you're right, I think it's 14 years since the first visual art exhibition with Sanford Biggers in your space, who is now a member of our curatorial council. So the cycle continues, and we've been thrilled to work with the Ringling and many other um, aspects and exhibitions over the years. In fact, it's actually the one correction I'm going to make is there is actually Sandy is the fifth, but there's also the fifth and sixth happened this year because the Ringling also hosted choreographer and dancer Rennie Harris for his Hermitage Greenfield Prize commission. And Sandy can talk maybe a little bit about how she's incorporated that collaboration into her work. But we are so honored and grateful to be part of this tradition. Have to thank the Greenfield Foundation. I know some of them are out there today listening, so thanks for your incredible support as well. Sandy is an extraordinary artist. She was selected among an infinite field of talented new work creators by a jury that included Ann Patterson, an artist who's been exhibited at the Ringling with Pathless Woods, Christine Kwan from Creative Capital, who may actually be out here with us today, and Allison Glenn, a wonderful curator of art based in New York, multi-talented trio who helped bring Sandy to the Hermitage and to the Ringling and to the Southeast. She has become this icon of the West Coast and the Southwest, and really is a wonderful, beautiful, smart, talented, driven artist who so embodies the mission of this prize, which is to make an impact on the broad as well as the artistic culture of our society. So when Sandy presented the idea of doing something site specific about the cultures and histories of resistance in our region, I can see why the jury leapt at that opportunity, and I'm not going to hog all the time, but just wanted to say thank you to you all, Ringling friends, Hermitage friends, and wonderful art lovers and friends and collaborators of Sandy for being here today. And I'm thrilled to turn it over to this extraordinary artist. And last thing I will say is if you have not gotten to see this exhibition and you are anywhere near this region, as Chris mentioned, till August 10th, do see it. It's still on view, not to be missed, and it's so extraordinary. So please join me in welcoming the brilliantly talented Sandy Rodriguez. Over to you, Sandy.
Thank you so much. So I am delighted to be here with you all. I just want to say good afternoon to you on the East Coast and good morning to you here on the West Coast. Thank you to the Hermitage Artist Residency, the Ringling Museum, for hosting this virtual Viewpoint Lecture. We can go ahead and start the slides. I am delighted to share this virtual space with you all for the next hour and share a bit about our exhibition with you. I look forward to a lively discussion at the end. My name is Sandy Rodriguez. I am a Los Angeles-based Chicana artist and researcher whose practice engages with historic materials and techniques of the Americas to paint visual histories. You're looking at installation views of the most ambitious exhibition I have created to date with the support of the Hermitage Artist Residency in the Ringling Museum. So through my ongoing series that Chris mentioned, the Codex Rodriguez Mondragon, I map resistance to colonial aggression by layering historical and contemporary events. So we're going to go through the slides in like 30-second intervals to just kind of move you through the space as it has so much to offer in every angle. The body of work bridges past and present to critique systems of power and imagine alternate futures. I'm drawing on 16th century colonial codices and maps created during the cultural collision of the Americas. My paintings embed historical narratives within the frameworks of modern geopolitics, social history, and cartography. As you've heard, Currents of Resistance is the culmination of my 2023 Hermitage Greenfield Prize and was developed, as you heard, across 2 years and multiple sites. At the Hermitage Artist Retreat in Englewood, at the Joshua Tree Highlands Residency in Joshua Tree, and here in Mar Vista. So that required moving 70 objects between 3 sites over 2 years. Um, so not only does it include these paintings and a panorama, the Cabinet of Curiosity, but I also commissioned original video and audio. The installation investigates resistance to colonial and environmental exploitation through an interdisciplinary lens, foregrounding the Gulf's region of intertwined histories and cultural resilience and ecological transformation. At the center of the exhibition is a 40-foot panorama in the round. And I was just so thrilled when we were able to manifest what I had dreamed of over the past 2 years. So, as you heard, the conceptual framework of the project emerged in 2022 when I received the nomination. And it allowed me the first time to really get my research and practice to the southeastern United States. During the first year, while I was working, we had an incredible amount of rainfall here in Los Angeles, and it decided to drip all over the central map that you'll see in a second. So while this work sustained rainwater damage, um, I was able to really kind of rethink that and reframe it as climate change acting as an active participant in my artistic process. And subsequently, I collected ocean water from Florida's eastern and western coasts and incorporated it into the watercolors that I create for each and every installation. It became the material and metaphor, the life force of the region, and a symbol of the dynamic interplay between the Atlantic and Gulf currents, both vital to the ecosystem and its histories. Let's take a look at the resistance map of Mexico. These are the 4 panels that are 8 feet by 4 foot that you saw displayed. So when we focus in the next slide on the resistance map of the Gulf of Mexico, it's a hand-painted factual history of the region, and it references visual elements from various sources, including colonial Mexican, Spanish, Italian, and American maps of La Florida and the Gulf region produced over the past several hundred years. The next slide will show the top corner is a howling beast, an omen from the Florentine Codex, along with figures from a rock art site I visited as part of my research that includes scenes of dancers, a friar, and a hunting scene from the lower Pecos along the Rio Grande in Texas. It was critical for me to visit the Mayor's Springs along with the Shoma Archaeological Foundation to go and look at these rock art sites that went back 4,000 years, with the addition of friars and churches in the colonial era, and again in the 19th century when Seminole military were stationed there. A selection of the fauna takes three-dimensional form and emerges out from the map and into the exhibition space, including 24 Mexican free-tailed bats, alligators, flying fish carrying the souls of warriors who perished in battle. There are postcard-sized vignettes that include a number of battle scenes, including the Calusa resistance of 1521, the fall of Mexico's capital, Tenochtitlan, in 1521, to contextualize what is happening across the Gulf, the Mixtan War of 1540 to 1542, as well as contemporary scenes of militarized response to peaceful racial justice demonstrations in New Orleans and in 2020. What you're looking at are a few of the details of the sources that I included within the map, including this map of Tecoltiche. 23 karat gold is burnished onto the map with the aid of garlic juice to write the name Gulf of Mexico in the center of the composition. Here you have a detail of the bat pollinating the agave and the image of Tenochtitlan on fire, and some of the historic sources. There's that scene from New Orleans that I mentioned, along with an incredible moment right over onto the left of the Luna expedition. And you have sea monsters from another map that are there, but you're also noticing a detail of a hurricane. Here are some of the historic sources of the Calusa resistance that I incorporated at those sites, as well as other historic maps. So these types of works definitely require the year and a half, 2 years to really investigate historic materials and decide which elements will be included to kind of point to these factual histories. Here you have the foil to that, which is the nocturne of the Minnesota Key with Calusa masks rising, as well as a panther fish that is swimming at the center of the map. One of the things that was an unanticipated but profoundly meaningful component of Currents of Resistance was my collaboration with Rennie Harris Pure Movement, the co-recipient of the 2023 Hermitage Greenfield Prize. Drawing on the shared context of the 2020 uprisings, I explored the embodied dimensions of resistance through the lens of dance, observing rehearsals during my residency at the Hermitage. Let's take a look at the next slide. I incorporated dancers' gestures onto the large scale compositions, which are painted using the gestures that I witnessed in the dance, embedding their movements and silhouettes. Let's go to the next slide. Embedded into the large scale compositions. So here you see a photograph that I shot of Rachel Snyder and Genesis Castañeda during rehearsals at the Hermitage. And you'll see how I translated those into some of these compositions. These works evoke the historical parallels to colonial era prohibitions against indigenous ceremonial dances and the uprisings they catalyzed, such as the Mixton Rebellion, which emerged in response to Spanish suppression of ritual expression and forced mining labor. So I was inspired by Rennie Harris's choreography and the militarized police response to the racial justice demonstrations. And so looking at the way in which these figures are juxtaposed on top of these protest scenes was something that took the full 2 years time, because while I started working on these, and these have about 20 layers of watercolor that are hand processed, the dancers was the final element that I included, and some have more transparent and some more opaque areas. So while we're living in a very dangerous time, art must create space for critical thinking, conversations, for beauty, for joy, for action. It's essential to look back at these factual histories, paying close attention to those areas where our communities have been targeted, and to understand how to protect each other and persist and thrive. What you're looking at now are some of the studies. So over the course of my residencies, I would work on smaller postcard size and 8x10 size um, sheets of amate paper, and really do studies of the place, capturing the light. We can go to the next one. Capturing the seasons, because while I prepare all my pigments and I'm going into these new kinds of environments, the color that I'm seeing in the spring, summer, winter, fall are very distinct and very much about the place. So while I showed up with 20 different blues and greens, it had nothing to do with that Gulf light and those colors. And here you have a lovely set of studies that we can take a look at that were observed from my studio at the Hermitage Artist Residency. Including things that I had also never observed, including red tide. These images of tear gas are pulled directly from the headlines. And here's an image that I worked on, really inspired by moments of tear gas in Tampa from 2020, but then I later painted in 2023. More historic maps that I looked at very closely to really understand the ways in which this region has been depicted historically. Here's an image of the pelicans that we see all throughout the area around the artist residency. Manatees, I never actually got to see one, but I know they're there. Dolphins after a storm just doing amazing dances for me outside the view of the studio. And the full moon from Englewood, Florida, which is so magical and absolutely breathtaking to allude to the passing of time and seasons. Here you have a piece that's called Death of Ponce de Leon. And really, this comes from looking at a few different sources. So while I'm looking at the Florentine Codex and looking at uh, visual and written histories about the war that was waged, I took some of those elements and some of those compositional kind of forms, and then I replaced the figures of dead indigenous figures on the boat with the figures of Ponce de Leon. I included the image of the Key Marco cat over it so that you really kind of get that juxtaposition. So when you're looking at this, it's a convergence of multiple sources. And so one of the things that was really kind of impactful was being able to make those connections across the Gulf. We can go to the next slide. So my technical process involves the study and preparation of native botanical specimens with healing properties, transforming them into pigments, inks, and watercolors. I paint in these potent site-specific materials onto amate paper. It's handmade by Efrain Danza, an Otomi papermaker in San Pablito, Mexico. It is a sacred ceremonial paper banned during the colonial period and underscores resilience of indigenous knowledge, systems, and spiritual significance. At the center of the installation, you also have a large display of all of the tools and materials that I shipped to Florida to create these works. So you're looking at prepared pigments in petri dishes, my watercolor palette, mullers, grinders, sea sponges, vials with botanical specimens, including acorns, cochinilla, and there is some heightening on some of these drawings in pastels. So I included those modern pastel colorants. But here's a nice view of all of the blues and ochres that I use to create the artworks and the shells that are used as palettes. The glass muller for grinding the pigments with the gum arabic and the other materials to create the consistency for the type of marks that I'm prepared to make. There is a wonderful making of the Currents of Resistance video that is installed in the gallery. It's about 4 minutes and 38 seconds. It was produced by video producer Andy Hopper, who flew out to Florida several times to my studio here in Los Angeles in Joshua Tree, and is an education video that is used in the gallery and lives online on my website for people who don't have a chance to go see the exhibition, and I encourage you all to take a look at that video that was produced on the occasion for our exhibition. As Christopher mentioned earlier, we had the opportunity of working with the Selby Botanical Gardens, and we spent a full day out at Spanish Point really looking at a number of samples and being able to really learn about the ethnobotany and history of the native flora of the region. We focused on plants that were medicinal, edible, utilitarian, and also some were used for poison. But here you have the red mangrove at two various states. Included in the materials that we saw, or not the materials, but the plants that we saw, I also incorporated other plants from the actual Hermitage site, as well as other native plants that were used for poison for, including colorin, the Texas mountain laurel that I observed out in Joshua Tree. The sea grape was just one of the most stunning plants that I hadn't seen before until I arrived in Florida. So this cabinet of curiosity is a new kind of vision for my work. It includes a new form, these hand-painted amante sculptures. So normally the fauna is painted within the maps, but it felt like the perfect moment to think about creating sculptures. So there are paper cores and plaster cores and wire mesh cores that are then covered in plaster, then hand painted. This is really about linking the tradition of natural history with the colonial practice of collecting and classifying. The botanical specimens were prepared in collaboration with Selby Botanical Garden. They highlight those native endemic plants traditionally used. The elements really are there to underscore the historic entanglement of scientific inquiry and imperial ambition. And so we're just going to look at a few of the samples a few of the elements. Here you see an alligator helmet that I created on top of a bike helmet, along with botanical specimens from Selby, drawn materials, drawn studies from other plants. On the top shelf, you have a number of elements here, including just beneath that one, various botanical specimens that are in denatured alcohol that are dispersing the pigments within the actual fluid in there. So by the end of the exhibition, it should change color. We have native pollinators of butterflies from Florida that are critical to the entire ecosystem. And it couldn't be a cabinet of curiosity for Florida without these iguanas, turtles, and a lot of the other materials. We can move to the next slide. So you have some more close-ups, including shark teeth that I was able to collect along with other Hermitage artist residents. I was taught how to really look closely at the sand to be able to identify the way it reflects light to be able to collect these. So those are in the lower portion. You have a close-up of the butterflies from the cabinet here. And more installation views. You can kind of see some of the other elements. That's an oyster catcher and some of those shark teeth again. And a few more details for you. But I was really thinking about how do we create opportunities for close looking for intergenerational audiences when I was creating this map, or not this map, this installation of the Cabinet of Curiosities section. Here you have a self-portrait of myself riding a Oslo Michi above an apothecary cabinet that I have next to some more botanical specimens. And these are the iguanas that have a lot of the source material that I printed out, kind of twisted into a core, wrapped in wire, plastered, covered in amate, and then painted with the hand processed color. One of the things that I didn't know about iguanas before I started this project is that they have a third eye on the top of their head to elude predators. And so that's the detail that you see on this particular iguana. There's another view of him with some of the beautiful shells from the Hermitage that I was able to borrow. Thank you so much for including those. There's the blue one, and their crest gets very kind of wild. It was a joy to be able to work at the Hermitage and to have iguanas running all over campus as you're going between buildings. And so you have some more comparisons of the map along with the exploded cabinet of curiosity. The pufferfish were very freaked out. While I didn't get to observe a live pufferfish, I did see some um, dead ones on the beach after a red tide. But so I put a mama and a baby pufferfish with very concerned expressions on their faces. Another element of the exhibition was Turtles of Resistance. So while I had been working on these turtles for the entire 2 years, it started with a wire frame and the amate covered shell. While I was at my first summer, was it summer? Yeah, first summer out at the Hermitage, it was about 2 in the morning, and I got a text message from one of the other residents saying, "Come out, the turtles are up here nesting, but bring the red light." And we had to be very quiet. And so we walked out on the beach at 2 in the morning and we sat down and we watched the turtles nesting. And as you know, these turtles come from thousands of miles away back to their place of birth to be able to make their nests. And one thing that I really wanted to see was the turtle hatchings, but I wasn't back out in time. So I asked Andy if he would come out to help me create a stop motion animation of the turtles coming out of the nest. And so while we did an experimental video, which you can also see on the website, but in the exhibition, one thing that you'll notice is that they have little protest signs. And these protest signs actually come from um, news stories of protests going back from the BP Gulf spill all the way to the Piney Point phosphate plant disaster and the ongoing red tide crisis. So they're bilingual signs. They say water is life, agua es vida. And we were able to borrow the actual sea turtle nest signage through the Hermitage, which allowed for me to really visualize what I had in my head. There's also a number of turtle drawings of just skeletons behind, just to allude to the compromised ecosystem. Here you can see some more clear details of some of the protest signs. Some were printed, some were hand drawn, but they're all from the actual protest signs from the region. Ah, the bats. There are almost 20 bats. Some are intended to be more like backup dancers and have more kind of shadows around, and they're really escaping from the Cabinet of Curiosity. And these are really a reference to a Goya print, The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters. And I really wanted viewers to have that experience of the bats coming out. But they have obsidian eyes, as does all of our turtles, which is a very potent material. But here you can see, next slide, where the material of the amate really wanted to become the skin and the flesh and the fur of the bats. And I'm just so thrilled that we were able to include them in the exhibition, just kind of inviting viewers in through the second entrance of the exhibition. There he is. Next slide. So you see where they come out of the map and into the space. Move on. So again, it's a number of studies, the larger folios, the map, the materials, the video, the botanicals, to really create an immersive environment here. So while we know that the exhibition critically engages with the pressing contemporary issues of climate change, social change, and historical erasure, particularly in light of the ongoing efforts to suppress these topics within the United States and Florida's educational institutions, it's through this intersectional and interdisciplinary approach that Currents of Resistance challenges audiences to reconsider dominant historical narratives and recognize the enduring legacies of resistance and cultural production in the Gulf of Mexico. My research is both rigorous and interdisciplinary, drawing from conversations with historians, anthropologists, scientists, paleoanthropologists across the country. Primary research was conducted over 2 years, and additional research took place at institutions including the Huntington Library, Museum, and Botanical Garden in San Marino, the Hispanic Society and Library in New York, Stanford University's Rumsey Map Center in Palo Alto. I dedicate this exhibition to the Florida Board of Governors as a direct assertion of factual and historical representation. It stands in critical response to recent policy changes, including the January 2024 elimination of sociology as a core curriculum and the prohibition of the state's funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in Florida's college campuses. By juxtaposing historic and contemporary narratives, Currents of Resistance affirms the importance of acknowledging and preserving histories of resilience, defiance, and cultural expressions throughout the Gulf region. Thank you very much for sharing this time with me. These are the current and upcoming exhibitions for 2025. I'm looking forward to having a lively conversation with you all, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandy. What a wonderful and inspiring talk. At this time, I'd love to open the floor for question and answer. As visitors, you can pop your questions into the chat or raise your hand, and I can go through and unmute you if you have any questions for Sandy. And I see one coming in right now. Let's see. Can you share part of your process? What feels the most joyful or surprising for you, Sandy? Oh, I think you might be muted.
We can take the slideshow down and just go to the talking heads at this point.
Yeah.
So, what was the most surprising? I would say being able to really observe the quality of light and color across the four seasons over the span of 2 years, being able to really understand the history of the Gulf region in a way that would not have been possible if I didn't have the opportunity to join the folks at the Hermitage in the spring, summer, winter, and fall. It was an incredible and just wonderful experience to be able to speak with historians and botanists and all of the different wonderful community members that I had a chance to talk to while I was there.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have another question, excuse me, that just came in from Deborah. I love the exhibit, exclamation point. Can you tell us more about the paper you used for the paintings?
Sure. So the paper is amate paper. It is created using a variety of plant fibers. Traditionally, it would have been amatil and mulberry, but I will say that over the more recent period and era, they're using jonote, but also agave and a number of other local plants that are from that area. It is the exterior bark that is then simmered in a lye water solution that then becomes very fibrous, almost like hairs. It is then masticized or pounded with volcanic stones or amate beaters onto a wood board that is dried in the sun. It does not have sizing like European paper, and it has taken me 8 years to understand how to work directly on the paper fibers without putting on a gesso ground. So the fibers drink the watercolor and it's all the way into the fiber of the paper. So this is a sacred ceremonial paper that was used in ritual and therefore was made outlaw. By creating stories of resistance on outlaw paper, I think it creates a really wonderful and powerful material for my exhibitions.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have another one here from Mary Scott Fleming. Love old maps and your use of their style of representation. I'm interested in your use of ocean water and how it might have affected your pigments in ways regular water may not have.
That's a great question. I'll tell you that as I'm working on these exhibitions, I consult with conservators throughout many steps of the process. I too was concerned about using salt water, and so I was able to invite paper conservators from the Huntington Museum, from the Getty Museum, and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art to join me in the studio to look at the map while it was in progress. We talked about the way in which rainwater might impact the paper and the color. We talked about the way salt water might impact the paper and the color. And what I discovered was that throughout the history of contemporary art, artists have been using ocean water and salts on their works on paper. And it doesn't shift the color so much as it might create a little bit of sparkle to it over time with the salt. So that to me was very attractive because I do at times include a little bit of mica or a little bit of marble dust to give it an extra sheen. So one of the things that you'll find when you go to the exhibition and you kind of look from left to right is that some of the more mineral-based colors, like the azurites and the malachites, will have a twinkle to the color.
Yes, it is very magical. I sat with you on a workshop and was able to use those mediums on the paper, and it really is, it creates a lustrous effect. See, we have another question, sort of riffing off of the last. You commented on the inclusion of climate change on your map when drops of rain contacted the amate paper. I'm wondering if you anticipate any other agency or liveliness of the material. For example, amate paper over time. Does amate paper have its own animacy over time, and what will that do to the work?
Does amate paper have what?
Have like any action of like, does it change over time?
So one of the things that I should mention is that I love to spend time in special collections, and I just was able to spend a few days at the Hispanic Society looking at colonial period amate and works on amate. So the way in which it is distinct from the colonial period to present really depends on the fibers that are used and how it's created. Sometimes the amate is layered and pounded while damp to create a laminate or a double thickness amate paper. There are some shifts in it, but it's very, very stable. Um, I don't know what the changes might be, but it's not going to be very dramatic, at least for a couple hundred years.
Thank you so much. And it looks like we have a visitor who would like to ask their question. So, Carol, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now for you to ask your question, please. And you'll just have to unmute yourself on your end.
Thank you very much. I did finally put it in the Q&A. And Sandy, tell us how you felt when you learned about winning the Hermitage Greenfield Prize.
Carol, it was absolutely amazing. We were in a green room and we were all on Zoom with, I want to say, about 100 people. And I was just running up from the studio. So I was in studio clothes, paint on me, no makeup on. And I'd written the proposal. And Andy came on and announced that I had won the prize. And it was just an incredible feeling to know that I was going to be invited to come and create a site-specific exhibition for the Southeast. It is extraordinary the work that the Hermitage Artist Foundation provides for artists. It was an opportunity for me to really think about my work in a different context. And like I said, being at a site that had musicians and dancers and writers and artists together was an incredible opportunity. And when my work and Rennie's work really came together in that very unexpected way, it was something that I'm very excited to continue to follow is how the foundation creates those opportunities for interdisciplinary collaboration and for creating space for some of these more rigorous types of installations. Thank you for the question, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Let's see, we have another one that came in from Pam. She says, I'm really interested in your decision not to frame the paper-borne art. For me, it
Mm.
gives the viewer the chance to escape with stories they depict as the need for resistance increases by just grabbing them off the wall.
So I'll tell you that the pigments and the paper have a life force because they are botanical and mineral and specific to each site. There is an opportunity for close looking that is only made possible by having them displayed with magnets on the wall so that you can see the fibers, so that you can see the way that the color is absorbed or floating on the top. There's a way to create a close looking experience that is not interrupted by a museum glass or by a frame.
Thank you. Thank you. Great question, Pam. Let's see. We have another question in from Helena. Very intriguing and relevant work. Thank you. I was wondering if there was any instance where you came across an indigenous practice, such as the paper you use or the poison mentioned, that you researched, you found had been significantly misrepresented during the colonial archival period, or if you had talked more directly with individuals who still use those practices and try to be as correct to the original formulas and reasons for usage.
Well, I'll say that it was in the beginning of the series that I came across the work of Diana Magaloni, who wrote a book called Colors of the New World. And in it, she describes and points to Book 11 and Chapter 11 of the Florentine Codex, which is a 2,000-page encyclopedia of knowledge of the New World created by indigenous scholars, scribes, and a friar. Within Book 11, you have a chapter that is essentially a treatise on painting. So it outlines the specific colorants, how to process them, and then with pictorial representations of what that looks like. So over the past 8 years, I have really done more in-depth research with conservators and anthropologists to really think about the material, but also the techniques for processing. While traditionally these colors are made very stable using an orchid gum binder from Abladia autumnalis, a specific orchid that stabilizes plant-based color, the acquisition of those orchid bulbs is very cost prohibitive. So I'm using gum arabic, which is not traditional because it's a Senegalese acacia that is widely used globally for watercolor. But I'm being as thoughtful about each material as it has symbolic power or it has conceptual associations with it, and really enjoying the process of going very in depth with the materials. And for example, when I'm processing a specific color, I may go back to that historic text and recite the almost poetry that goes with that text while I'm handling it. When I'm using an ochre that is from a specific region, you're smelling it, and it will take you right back to that place where you collected it. Um, it is really extraordinary to get to process plants through boiling, through heat extraction, through um, precipitation of an organic dye, but also to the handling of just the water to create these specific pigments. Thank you for the question.
Great. Yeah, it really sounds like an immersive experience. Let's see, I have one more for you. How does working in a museum setting influence the way you think about your art?
That's a great question. Um, I will say that prior to committing my time full time to my studio practice, I did have the opportunity to work in museums for almost 17 years. And it is a real joy to get to work with such thoughtful curatorial departments like Chris and his team, to work with educators from your museum, to really think through how our audience is going to engage with um, the exhibition on a number of levels. There are entry points for people to have conversations, and this is why I consult with such a range of experts to be able to generate conversations from a number of perspectives. One of the things that I find to be very important is to support educators. And with a background in museum education and having developed curriculum and hands-on activities for audiences to think critically about subject matters in the history of image making in the Americas, one thing that I was able to do with the education department at the Ringling was to invite educators from the Selby Botanical Garden and education department from the Ringling to join me for a professional development workshop where I created a number of prompts for different types of learners to walk our educators through it to then inspire some original programming inspired by techniques, materials, and content of the exhibition. So it is really a dream to get to work with such a thoughtful set of museum professionals to be able to create some interesting and valuable experiences for generations of visitors and the local community.
Great, thank you. And on behalf of the education team, we thank you for inspiring us in that workshop, Sandy. That workshop directly inspired and influenced many different workshops that we carried in programming with families and youth and adult workshops as well. So thank you for that. It definitely was enriching for our team. Great. Well, if anybody has any other lasting questions or wanted to raise hands for Sandy, go ahead and do so now. Just as a final note, we are recording this talk and it will be processed and then put up on our YouTube channel and sent to the Hermitage as well as to Sandy for distribute to our visitors and guests. So with that, thank you so much, Sandy, for joining us today on behalf of the Ringling, and then, of course, the Hermitage Artist Retreat. Thank you for all of your work and everything that you've shared with us today. It's so very inspiring to hear directly from the artist, the process, the thought, the research that goes into so much of what you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.